felt it would give us the best access to the strongest possible group of senior insurance decision makers.
Insurtech Insights is a must-do conference, I think, for the network that is built here.
Want to introduce the next session. As I said, it's a second run of what we had at the show last year, so really excited for this second edition of it. So without further ado, let me introduce the panelists for a view from the top.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good to meet you, see you all here. We'll get started, and we'll start with maybe David, you introduce yourself, and then I'll go next.
Yeah, sure. So my name is David Healy. I'm president of SunLife US. We serve about 50 million Americans in various businesses that we have. My background came up, I've sort of two chapters in my career. Started in operations, really worked my way up through the organization, and then in 2011, I actually joined our leadership team running technology and operations, so that's predominantly my background. Transitioned to leading P&Ls in 2017, running our employee benefits business, more recently our dental business, and then now as president of the US. So that's my background.
Great. I'm Nirav Dagli. I'm the founder of Spinnaker Analytics. We're a 25-year-old firm based in Boston. We've been doing predictive analytics and AI long before those terms were coined. And David, you and I have known each other for 20
A long time, yeah.
Long time.
We've worked together in various capacities for a long time.
Yeah, very good. And so we were discussing what to present at a conference like this, and we don't like going through a lot of PowerPoint slides with a lot of jargon. So we just thought we'll have a conversation, and you guys can jump in whenever you want. Let me start by asking a question. How many here are from carriers? They may be from any segment, life, EB, PNC. Just show of hands on how many carriers. And thanks for that. How many are from brokers? Again, regardless of segment, retail, wholesale, doesn't matter. Great. How many here are fintech vendors, AI or anything else?
They're all outside.
Yeah, half the room is probably in the wrong room right now. What do the rest of you guys do? All right. So we'll get started with the question most of us have been struggling with, but no jargon. We're going to keep it simple and speak in plain English and just discuss what kind of things are we struggling with, what opportunities do we see, and then also what do we see coming down the pike. Make sense? Okay. So, bit of an icebreaker. So David, when an AI vendor pitches to you, what is the first 1, 2, or 15 things that come to your mind?
Well, a lot of things go through your mind. You know, I think obviously you have to ask yourself, hey, is this just rebranded traditional software as AI? You get that for sure. But mostly I think about, do they understand my business? And do they really understand the problems I have? And so when you do get a pitch, you're thinking about what problem are they trying to solve? And ultimately, I'm asking myself, is this a problem that I have that I need solving?
Great, and I remember a long time ago when we were having this discussion, the statement you made was, don't tell me what you do, show me what you do.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of the times at pitches, you run into this scenario, particularly in our industry and insurance, you know, the demo looks great until you run into insurance data. And then, you know, I think the proof is really in the delivery and the outcomes. And I'm very focused on that in terms of how do we deliver using technology more effectively for our clients. There's a lot of opportunity in our space to really raise the game in terms of how we do that, whether it's, you know, for our broker partners, whether it's for the employers and sponsors we work with, or whether it's for members. So many unmet needs, and AI produces a tremendous opportunity, you know, to try to find ways to do that. But you really got to work with partners who are focused on those kind of outcomes and not just, you know, pitching you their version of the truth.
Great. When an AI vendor reaches out to Spinnaker,
hold on, this must be pre-AI.
Yeah, that's the one that's up.
Okay.
Well, now, we're good. We say to them, what do you mean you are an AI vendor? We are an AI vendor. If you're using AI, at least use it to figure out what we do and come to us with a pitch that makes sense, instead of just a canned standard pitch to us. And so those of you who are vendors here, I would encourage you to think about that. Whenever you reach out to a company, what do you think they are interested in besides the word AI?
Is that a high bar for you in terms of getting past the first pitch? What are the things that really make you screen people out?
It's a high bar for vendors and for clients as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess the question is, we believe we don't need to do most things. So what is it that we should be doing that we're not doing well? And usually the run-of-the-mill pitch is, we can help you do HR better, we can help you do finance better, we can help you do marketing better, without the specificity on how exactly.
Right.
And when they say we have an AI-enabled service, when we ask them, what is this AI? Oh, we don't know. You'll have to talk to somebody in the back room about that.
Right. Yeah, I think picking the right problems to solve is where I start. I said, what problems do you have and that you can solve? And ultimately, what are those problems that I really need help with? Because there are lots of opportunities in the organization. There's plenty of ways we can do things better and differently. But ultimately, we want to make sure that when we prioritize and bring someone in and we're working with a third party, that they're really going to move the dial in terms of what it means for our clients, what it means for our, the outcomes and the financial outcomes that we're trying to drive. Those are all things that are real for us and are front and center for any decision around bringing someone in.
So 5 years ago, clients would often call us asking us, what is AI? How do I use it? Now it's more about, we're spending a lot of money, we're not sure if it's solving the problems. So if I ask about your organization and your experience, what are some of the challenges with AI that you are encountering?
Yeah, well, so obviously the tech is very new, and we're working with a number of partners right across our business. We've, run pilots and experiments. We've deployed it, technology in different places, and we've had some early wins and some successes. But in terms of challenges, I think scaling is definitely, the biggest challenge right now. And a lot of it comes down to adoption and change management, and it's less about the people, or less about the tech sometimes, and it's more about, making sure that the tech solution is right for what we're doing, and then ultimately that it's in the hands of our team and the people who need to use it, so it's augmenting and supporting their work effectively, and it can scale. So that's definitely a big challenge. I think another one is, the payoff, the ROI, what are we really, the return that we're going to get for the level of effort and the change and the investment we're making. Is it really there? Some things look obvious on the surface, but then when you dig into them, you have to have, there's a lot of questions that haven't really been answered fully yet, just around use of tokens and how expensive they will be and what it means to scale and the cost of doing that. So that's definitely a challenge as well. And then the tech itself, it obviously is still evolving, and there are, the oversight, the governance, making sure that it performs in the way that you expect, that it isn't lying to you or maybe not following the rules that you put forward. How do you know that? How do you govern it? Those are some of the things that we're certainly challenged with as we look to adopt it and scale in our business. I'm sure these are things that you've come across a lot in your client.
Yes, we do. And one of the areas you touched upon, what we often find is our algorithm will solve the problem it's supposed to solve, but there's many other things around it that are broken at the client side. The processes are not clear, they've not been documented, some things take too long, they're full of errors. So there is a lot of fixing, whether it's technology, automation, or straightforward process design, that needs to happen before and after, without which the business outcome is not realized, and then the fatigue sets in. I'm spending a lot of money, and I'm not seeing the results for it. How many folks here would raise their hand if I ask the question, it's less about any specific usage of AI, but much more about, are we getting the return on it? Is it delivering the business outcome or not? Is that a problem folks are seeing? 2. Okay, 7. The rest are pretty good. The AI is working great for them. You're going a mile a minute. All the carriers and brokers announcing 20% reduction in workforce with AI. Oh, finally a few people laughed. So, okay, so we share your skepticism, and that's why we're talking about it here. So maybe, David, you can illustrate one example of how are you trying to deal with it? And maybe you just speak a little bit about your business that you are overseeing and then pick something.
Yeah, sure. So we have 4 businesses in the U.S. Our dental business, which is one of the largest dental providers in the U.S. We serve over 30 million Americans. That business has a lot of technology, and and it's a highly operational business to begin with. We're predominantly in the government program space, but there's, because of the governance and oversight of the requirements for that business, it does have limits in terms of where it can be used and adopted. The rest of our businesses are predominantly in the employee benefits space, so we're the largest independent writer of medical stop loss in the U.S., so that's really catastrophic claims for healthcare. Those require a lot of judgment. They require for underwriting, for risk management, and they require a lot of automation for claims. So, that's a second business. And then we are in the employee benefits business. So we're a top 10 provider of employee benefits in the U.S., serving employers with a full array of, life and disability, absence management, supplemental health products. And then we have a closed block of life business. So, SunLife, we're traditionally a life insurer. We actually moved away from that business over, post-financial crisis. But for the clients we serve, we are their life insurer, and we continue to be an important part of their world, and we're committed to serving their needs. So those are the businesses we have. And there's various ways in which we, can think about technology and AI adoption in those businesses. But to your earlier point around scaling and around use cases and really getting an ROI, I think it requires a lot of discipline and focus. You have to prioritize relentlessly because there's lots of things that on the surface look like opportunities, but the payoff and the return for the investment, isn't always there.
Yeah. We have encountered clients where the CEO says, we're using Claude. And I'd ask, for what? For everything. And then you start looking into it. Yes, some programmers are using Claude to improve upon their coding. There's some usage of agentic AI to find information, but it is all very piecemeal. And it unfortunately does not start that way. It ends that way. The start is always this big bang. It's going to do everything for us. Several $1 million later, when there's no benefit emerging, is when people start going a little bit smaller. I think one thing that you are doing differently is you're starting in very small, discrete places, seeing what works, what does not, before you start scaling up.
Yeah, because I think part of it is that change management is important. I mean, having the team being familiar and understanding the potential of the tools and where they work really well and can augment the job of our team or any individual, and where they're not, is a really important foundation, and getting people comfortable with that is really critical. But also, yes, we're starting small. I think everyone's dealing with those pilots, but you have to also work your way on pilots that actually have the potential to really scale and drive a lot of new opportunities for serving clients better and differently. And that's where, as an industry, we have lots of potential to do that. There are things that over time, we haven't thought about deploying technology to serve, clients in certain ways because it was just too expensive to do it. But the potential of AI and some of the tools available now allow you to think about things that you would not have done in the past just because the cost and the return of it or the expense of doing it was just too great.
Yes. We are seeing this as well, which is carriers especially, and to some extent brokers, have grown up in this environment of you make a system decision and then you stick with it for 15 plus years. It may be an underwriting system, maybe a claim system, maybe the general ledger. And that mindset shift of, well, for certain modules, I should be able to use AI or algorithms, and 6 months from now, if something better becomes available, I need to be able to swap it out and replace with something better, cheaper, more accurate. That's a significant mindset shift. Now, you grew up in ops and technology before running P&L. Is this something that you are having to try and shift the mindset on?
Yeah, I think it's an advantage with the background that I have for sure, because, at a moment like this, I think leadership actually matters more, not less, because of the change management because of the way in which you have to work with people and teams to think about designing and delivering the work differently. And one of the ways we talk about it is, scaling really, if you think about our businesses, insurance, whether it's our businesses or others in the sector, we do a lot of really, important judgment work. There's a lot of bespoke products and services. There's, maybe large numbers of teams, but each team independently is doing very different work. And the opportunity to scale those are not always there because you're looking at, smaller teams with very distinct roles in the organization to serve clients. So the real opportunity around scaling requires really redesigning the work itself. And that takes an understanding of how work gets done today. Just coming in with the point solution and applying it to a certain part of your business is, might be helpful, but it's only going to get you so far. And I think that's where, people are realizing with a lot of pilots, you can get distracted easily and you can have this sort of illusion of progress, but the returns aren't really there. The work hasn't changed. The underlying platforms haven't evolved. You haven't figured out how to do it differently enough that you can really leverage the technology fully. And so you do need people that understand how work gets accomplished today, why it's done the way it is. And as you would expect in insurance businesses, most of those ways that it works, people are optimized within their local function. And now you've created this potential where, hey, I can move this work around. I can do it over here instead of there, or I can use some automation in one place to make my team more effective at serving clients somewhere else. But that requires a lot more leadership. It requires an understanding of how the work gets done today and a willingness to really change how you work. And that's less about technology, and it's more about really being focused and disciplined around changing how you operate your business.
So because we develop mathematical algorithms, from a development point of view, we don't have much need for large language models. A lot of people use them to craft more elegant emails. But at Spinnaker, we allow use of 4-letter words. So our emails are very short, very efficient. We don't need something else to make it elegant. And if you're interested in writing a haiku in the style of Shakespeare, you shouldn't have a job at Spinnaker. You should go work somewhere else. Where we are making use of these large language models is it's making the ingestion of information quicker, and on the very other end, client interaction. We have portals and the clients log in and they can look at all the information and all the insight. We're changing that dynamic. So if you're David Healy, you don't have time to go and log onto some portal. You can just use an app and say, what are my sales forecasts in the Northwest Territory for the rest of the year? And it should give that information to you very quickly. So we are improving the wrapping of user interaction by using those. Now, when it comes to quantitative reasoning, which is where Spinnaker has always focused, the large language models are not great, not yet, at least not in the commercial usage. Will they get there at some point? Yes, and that's, well, let me turn it back to you. Before I talk about what we are looking at, what's next for you? Where are you focused for the next 6, 12, 18 months where you see there might be some difference in what you are trying to do?
Yeah, I think, developing more principles around where judgment needs to be applied and making sure that we've got the right people and teams overseeing and governing that work versus where we can let the automation do some work in support of that person who's serving our clients. That is something that continues to evolve. Like you said, we're learning a lot from the work we're doing, but even just moving from one version of a large language model to the next forces you to go back and have to, re-examine all of the things that you put in place and to determine if it, is it still working the way it was intended? Is it following your guidance or breaking the rules? How do you know that? So I think there's a lot of work to be done. Even though the technology, this is the worst version of it we're ever going to have, it's going to get better all the time. But we can't just rely on that. We're a heavily regulated business. We have a lot of stakeholders, and serving our customers and making sure our people are at the center of the solution is a real priority of ours, because we take a lot of risk. We promise a lot of services. We do a lot of things for our clients, and it's important that we never lose sight of that this technology can be used better and differently in service of our clients. But I think understanding how and making sure that it's working as intended is a big part of our near-term focus. And then, to the point earlier, just finding ways to redesign our work and our approach so that we can scale it up. But that requires, like I said, a lot of discipline around priorities. You can't run 100, programs at once when you're dealing with the potential of, the change required to really scale. You have to be very focused and disciplined so that you are learning and the team is learning and they're adapting as the technology evolves. So I think, that's in the near term where a lot of our focus is. I mean, I'm assuming you're seeing and hearing some of this from your clients as well.
Yes. I think two things you mentioned. One is when we talk about swapping in and out, we are seeing sometimes an older version of a large language model is a lot more cost effective for the problem that you're trying to solve. The other thing we're beginning to see is we're not quite in the Sony Betamax versus VHS. Everybody's too young to know what I'm talking about.
Me too.
Thank you. I don't feel alone anymore. But some swappability is now getting a little bit harder to do. So we are making sure that the client understands what the use case is and recognizing that if the current technology solution may have a better alternate 6 months from now, will you be able to swap to that? It requires a change in mindset of how the work gets arranged and how the work may need to change in order to accommodate.
Yeah, so on those 2 points, on the second one, we are working with multiple partners because of that. Locking yourself in at this early stage, we have to understand how the economics are going to evolve, how the technology is going to evolve, how walled it becomes, and what the switching costs are going to be, because there's obviously switching costs even just to changing the workout, which matter. On the first point, I think we are seeing that. Like we had a team out with AWS in Seattle. Within a week, we're working on some front end of our claims process. It became obvious, I don't think this is unique to us, and a lot of insurance companies, data is really obviously king, and it's really important for many things. But because of that, data can exist in multiple parts in the organization. So, you can go out and use AI tools to go and bring that information together and be in the service of your client so that you can make faster decisions or serve them more effectively. But the cost of how the AI agents run to do that can quickly outweigh redesigning where the data is in the first place and how you access it in order to scale it efficiently. So I think there's a lot of the economic side of things that, as you talk about it, still needs work and will be part of our focus into making sure that it's going to meet the needs of our clients and obviously meets the needs of our business at the same time.
Yes. And I know different carriers and brokers are on a different journey of taking all this data from legacy systems, moving it into a data lake. But we've had instances where the CFO would pull me aside and say, whatever you do not pull the data from the data lake because I don't trust it. And so we have to go back to the legacy systems. In fact, a lot of our algorithmic work, we do forecasting, propensity models, etc., but a lot of it is on plugging data gaps. Because I like to say perfect data is like world peace. It's a noble concept, but you shouldn't hold your breath for it. And don't go around spending $15 million in 3 years of cleaning that. There are ways in which you can plug that information and create quick intelligence and patterns from which you can take business actions. And that's what this room mostly needs to focus on. The other piece related to that is, like you said, when the work has to keep on changing, from a risk management point of view, sometimes when you swap something in and out, it may appear to work, and it probably does the work you want it to. How do you make sure it doesn't do something else that you never instructed it to?
Right.
And then the other mindset shift is, because of limited in-house capabilities, carriers and brokers need to be a lot more willing to work with other partners, firms, individuals, etc., almost like making a movie. A lot of different people with different skill sets need to be involved, as opposed to a monolithic structure where you try to build everything yourself.
And so just in our case, we don't use AI technology to make any claim determinations, as a rule. Our teams, our people, and their expertise and judgment is at the center of what we do. We're leveraging it to make it easier for them to do their jobs and to find new ways to serve our clients. But I think, understanding how the technology is working and as it evolves as quickly, being able to validate what it's doing and how it's doing it as it evolves is a really key part of what we're all working through, I think.
And in working with carriers and brokers, we've learned to be very nimble. Spinnaker doesn't like to make anything that we can get from somewhere else, cheaper, faster, better. But as we look at some of the new AI tech, what we're seeing is that this shift from explainability to predictability. It's actually flipped now, where often predictability is great, but explainability is very poor. So previously we were putting in safeguards in place where we'll run multiple algorithms so you could explain as well as predict. Now that's getting increasingly more cumbersome, and that's what our next several months are going to focus on.
Yeah.
How do we do a better job of making sure our clients can actually use it?
Right, and it's something we can never lose sight of. Like any decision we make, needs explainability, traceability, and understanding of exactly how we got to where we got. And that is a key part of, being in a highly regulated industry and having a long-term commitment to our clients to do the right thing when we're, working with them and whatever we're working for. So,
Great. So I know we're almost at time. I want to take a few minutes for any Q&A. But David and I and two other colleagues, one from my personal lines, David from EB as a carrier, as well as my colleague who runs Spinnaker Labs, we're going to have a bit of a workshop to get a little bit more into details on the ROI and scaling. Go through a carrier and broker case study to say, what were we brought in to do? What was the experience? What was the solution? And what were some of the lessons learned? It's going to be in room 1B03, or the way I try to remember, it's diagonally across all the way. So folks are welcome to attend that, but maybe I can take a minute. Are there any questions for David? Maybe not for me.
I'm going to defer all the hard ones to you anyway.
I don't know if you have any microphone or people just want to shout. Yeah.
Yeah, when you talk about adoption, and I hear you say adoption is a challenge. That if I heard that's correct.
Yeah.
Is one of the ways you look at that the number of people that are using a certain AI technology, or what's your metric for adoption?
No, I think it's...
Hang on, before you answer that.
Go ahead. I told you to answer the question.
No, but I just tell you, I'm going to refine the question. Don't include number of people who are using Copilot to write complaining emails to you. You're going to be biased by that, so keep that aside.
Yeah, I think it's really about, you can't look at it through one lens. Part of it is understanding people's comfort and how they're leveraging it. So you need to understand what they're doing and where they're using technology differently to run their processes. But I think part of the adoption is really finding out the limits of where it can scale. And I think pilots are easy to prove in a small basis, but that as you apply more judgment and there is more rules, that's where the adoption tends to, and a lot of what we do are quite complicated. And so I think, we don't usually think of it in terms of just numbers of people or pilots, because ultimately they have to work their way into, scaling is really around working its way into the way we serve clients and the way we, all the transactions that we support them. And so we think about it in those terms.
And in my experience, in our last 30 years, insurance is unlike any other industry in the sense that when new technology comes in, it disintermediates an industry, what Amazon did with retail. Insurance is the only industry where new technology creates new intermediaries. Just because online benefits portals started doesn't mean the brokers went away. So when we look at this, when you talk about adoption, programmers using it to improve their code, or finance using it to access or run some analysis, we are seeing better use cases on very discrete tasks. before we talk about automating the whole function. So it's going to be a journey.
The bigger opportunity is really redesigning the system of delivery with the ecosystem that we're in, with the partners we work with, finding ways to do that more effectively for clients because, we don't think about it just the work that we do, but we're often working within a larger ecosystem of, third parties, whether it's an enrollment company or a broker or, there's so many, our HRIS partners, there's so many others that are part of the delivery system now. That's really the system level change that's really creates the, is the opportunity where none of that scaling is really even started.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just to build on that, how do you differentiate optimizing a process versus optimizing the end-to-end life cycle? Because I found once you've optimized the process, your choke point just moves either to the left or
Yeah, that's right. And that's why we talk about sort of redesigning the work. So we really think of it in three terms: personal productivity, workflows for teams, and then more transformational. And so I think you can make a lot of progress on personal productivity. You can even, have some success within a team, but the real opportunity is to redesign the work and not first within your own four walls perhaps, but also then, like I said, within the environment that you operate in, with the partners that you work with. And I think new and opportunities will come about working with partners differently to serve clients more effectively. And those are the bigger opportunities, but I think as we learn how to use it and adopt it, I think more of those possibilities will open up for our teams as they recognize the potential of the technology.
And what we find, to your point about the choke point moves somewhere else, it was always there. It's just that the choke point you're solving for was much bigger. So when we look at it, we will try to look at the end-to-end process, and your use case needs to identify and quantify, this is a big problem. Once we solve it, we'll have to solve those incremental problems, but they will happen in those iterations, because there's no point in doing that if you can't fix this. But the journey is not complete. You're right about that.